Hey guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. My nickname is iFacePalm, and in this episode we're going to take a closer look at the brand new Czech Premium T8 Skoda T56 heavy tank, which features a very hard-hitting two-shot autoloader that has a potential of causing 920 alpha damage in just 3.5 seconds. And during this tank review, we will of course be looking into whether if it's worth picking up from the premium shop, how its tank statistics looks. I will compare its stats against a few other similar T8 premium heavy tanks, which will be followed up with an extensive armor profile rundown with focus on its weak spots and strength, and afterwards I will take you guys alongside two very recent battles, which hopefully will give you guys a good idea of this new Czech heavy tank in action. And finally I will finish up with an extended sum up and my rating of this new tank. Okay guys, let's get started. So what is the Skoda T56 all about? And are we now witnessing the brand new meta contender for both random and competitive battles, similar to what we witnessed when the Borask was introduced to the game? Because right off the bat, the Skoda T56 could definitely seem like a strong contender of becoming the new meta tank with its insane alpha damage potential. But how good is it really? Because as it might seem kinda overpowered at first glance, then the interesting question is, what are we not directly seeing? Or are we actually looking at the new meta tank? The interesting question remains, at least for me, is how did Wargaming, according to themselves, manage to balance a tank that has a damage potential of 920 damage in just 3.5 seconds, but still not good enough to push every other tank away? Because as it might from the beginning seem like everything is just a sunshine story for this tank and it's completely overpowered, because when diving deeper into this tank, then we directly notice that Wargaming definitely have tried to balance this tank, despite its insane alpha damage. Because the hull armor definitely does not give me the first impression that this tank is anything good, unless hulled down, alongside the lack of proper premium ammunition, together with a mediocre 3.5 seconds interclip reading speed. And furthermore, if we are comparing it against the very best, then the Skoda T56 definitely got its work cut out for it, as some of the very best heavy burst damage tank contenders out there would, in my opinion, include the IS-3A alongside the Object 703, to just mention a few. So the question remains whether the brand new Skoda T56 heavy tank is strong enough to be a part of the prestigious meta tank club, and if so, is it at the very top? Well guys, let's take a deeper look by doing a quick stats rundown with my current crew and tank setup. For the crew itself, nothing out of the ordinary. Brothers in arms, focus on view range for the commander, gun handling for the gunner, speed and gun handling for the driver, and last for the loader, intuition and repairs. And do notice the intuition skill, because for this particular tank it actually seems to make quite a lot of sense, because it is quite often that you will see yourself changing between those shells. And for the equipment, I have selected a bounty ventilation, turbocharger and a bounty rotation mechanism. For the ammunition, I have selected 14 AP shells, which each are capable of delivering an impressive average damage of 460 alpha. And keep in mind guys, that this is a two-shot autoloader, so it looks very impressive. And when looking at the average penetration of 208, it is definitely at the lower end, and you will very often, especially when you're facing a bad matchmaker or very heavily armored tanks, find yourself in switching to the premium shells. The shell velocity of 1020 is definitely not bad, but it's still nothing great. And when we take a look at the premium round, this tank has 14 AP shells, and we can directly see the effect of this in the average penetration that is only 248 millimeters. So the problem, in my opinion, of the ammunition loadout, that the AP shells are barely enough to consistently penetrate the enemy tanks unless you are top tier, shooting the enemy tanks from the side or rear. And the same situation we are seeing on the premium rounds, where 248mm penetration is definitely at the lower end, and you can imagine the dilemma you can face when meeting tier 9 or tier 10 heavies. And last, I have selected two high explosive shells that each are capable of dealing an average damage of 640 with an average penetration of 68. For the field modification, I have chosen lightweight suspension to get that 5% extra hull traverse speed for better mobility, parallax adjustment for the reduction of aiming circle size, and this is primarily due to that I'm very rarely fully aimed, especially for my second shot. And for the third one, I have chosen the periscope electric drive that gives us that extra 3% view range. And for the last one, I have selected the mobility category, because what this means is that our turbocharger suddenly receives its full bonus, which is quite nice, especially for those 2.5% extra engine power and that extra 1 km/h reverse speed. And for the consumables, nothing out of the ordinary, with small repair kit, small first aid kit and some food. So we had an average damage of 460, average penetration of 208, a rate of fire 4.75. But of course, what is so super unique about this tank is that auto loader that can unleash unleash its devastating 920 alpha damage in 3.5 seconds and retain a quite impressive reload speed of 21.75 seconds. And this particular number is very important, which we will also see in the tank comparison, because the difference between having an autoloader that takes 20 or 30 seconds very often will feel like night and day, where often I find myself in tank that has a long reload speed of 30 seconds or more to directly look for a hiding spot, but where a tank that has around 20 seconds, you can still remain very active in the course of the battle. And this, for example, we can see on the Tier 9 Skoda T50 or even the Tier 8 Premium Barrage, that both offers a manageable and fair reload time. The gun traverse speed 34.37, but do note that we receive several bonuses for this particular parameter, because in my opinion this tank feels surprisingly sluggish without the proper crew and the proper equipment to support it. For the gun depression, -8 degrees, which is definitely not bad, but I do often wish that it had -10 degrees. But hey, you can't have everything. For the aiming time, 2.74 seconds, together with a dispersion of 0.35, which is all to be expected from a heavy tank class. The average damage per minute of 2186 is surprisingly good for an autoloader, where you often will see it on other autoloader tanks that they are heavily penalized for their clip potential. But right here, 2186 looks quite impressive, if of course you can land your shots. HP wise, 1550. Yes, we are receiving 50 extra HP from that additional armor plating which we got from the field modification level. And when quickly looking at the hull armor, 170-70 and turret armor 220-95-70. We'll go of course into more details during the armor profile rundown, but the hull armor of 100 definitely does not seem very good right off the bat. Even it seems to be quite well angled. And for the mobility, yes, do keep in mind guys that we have a turbocharger fitted, and if I was going to select one item that is the most important for this particular tank, it would actually be the turbocharger, because the horsepower per ton is not really groundbreaking without it, but it receives a fair horsepower per ton of 14.77, alongside gets a very much needed boost in its top speed, but most importantly its reverse speed that now suddenly jumps from 15 to 18. And for the traverse speed, which 40.56, which looks very good. But keep in mind guys, we are receiving a lot of bonuses, because check this. Yeah, because with a standard crew that has nothing special and without a rotation mechanism, improved vents, and a turbocharger on top which improves the traverse speed without direct showcasing it in the numbers, then it feels surprisingly sluggish. But with that turbocharger fitted, you get proper mobility in my opinion. And last, we have some camo values that are really in the heavy tank category, nothing special, and we're finishing up with a view range of 444, which could look quite impressive. But of course do keep in mind guys that we are using premium consumables and we are using a bounty ventilation to improve this alongside commander bonuses. So if the view range is a problem, then you could of course switch the bounty ventilation and replace it with either coated optics or binoculars, depending on your playstyle. Okay guys, let's take a look at the tank comparison. Okay guys, so here we have the tank comparison where we are comparing the Skoda T56 against the Tech Tree, the TNH 105/1000, the Premium Bisonte C45, IS3A, Object 7032 and T77. Right off the bat, when taking a look at the base values for the DPM 1936 is actually looking quite interesting, especially when we compare it against some of the other autoloading varieties of tanks. And here the Skoda T56 has very similar potential damage per minute as the Soviet IS3A with around 1950. For the penetration values, 280, yes, that's definitely not the best, as we saw in the garage. It is quite poor, so in some way you need to ask yourself how reliably you want to penetrate with both the rounds, because if situations will only allow you to penetrate with one of your shells, then suddenly the DPM will become horribly low. And when we quickly take a look down to the shell velocity of 1020, it is definitely an average number, but nothing that stands out here. The king of the hill is of course the Soviet IS3A with its 1400. But what about of course if we change it to the premium rounds? Well, let's take a look. And there we go. The Skoda T56 uses the standard AP shells, where the Tech Tree TNH 105/1000 uses APCR, and for the last 4 tanks they use heat shells. So for the penetration, the 248 is very similar to its Tech Tree brought off, but when we take a look at the other variants, then 270 minimum seems to be today's meta. The American T77 seems to take it to a completely new level. And for the shell velocity, then the Skoda T56 retains the shell velocity of 1020, similar to its TNH 105/1000. And here we directly can see which of these tanks uses heat shells and which one doesn't. I do wish that the Skoda T56 had an option of 270mm heat shells rather than its 248 AP, because in the end it seems how reliably can I put in those those two shells. And when looking at the alpha damage, the 460 alpha damage, that is simply amazing. We directly see that the Skoda T56 is of course at a completely different league in this comparison. So right off the bat, it definitely looks like the king of the club. But of course, they all are autoloader in one form or another. So the important question of course comes in, what is the clip size, the intro clip reload speed, and the clip damage. So for the clip damage, 920 alpha damage for the Skoda T56 in 3.5 seconds. The Tech 3 variant only has the capability of delivering 640, but in 2.5 seconds. I'll go into more into this point during the review of the difference between the 2.5 seconds versus the 3.5 at the very end of the video, because in my opinion this gigantic difference is a deciding factor how much I enjoy the tank in the majority of situations. Besides that, of course, we can comparing this 920 damage with 3.5 seconds against of course the Bisonte's 1080, but it has to deliver that in 6 seconds, which is similar to the IS3A that also in 6 seconds is able to deliver 1170. How fast you can deliver that damage, it's such a vital thing for your very own protection and the possibilities that you have before the enemy tank simply either hides away or destroys your tank. And when looking at the American T77, 1080 in 4 seconds, that just seems superior in comparison, because not only is it just half a second difference, but the penetration of 299, it just feels a light year ahead of the 248. But of course the problem for the T77 is that extreme reload time of 40 seconds, which in my opinion is the very worst tank in this comparison, as you will very often feel forced to already have an escape plan in your head before you even start firing the first shot. The Object 703 is of course quite different in comparison to the other ones, as it has an extra turret, but of course the potential clip damage if both are fired is of course a bit different. But if you manage to fire both your shells, it's 780 instant damage, or alternatively it will take the 703 5 seconds to fire both its shells. So at this current state the clip damage definitely looks promising of 923.5 seconds, but I'm still left with the feeling of how often can I make sure that I can make it count. Because do keep in mind that for example the Bisonte has an auto reloader system together with the IS3A and the 703, where missing that extra shot is not really going to force you to make a full clip reload. Well, let's continue. And for the gun handling, wide average aim time of 3 seconds, and furthermore a base dispersion of 0.42, which again places itself around the middle, alongside when moving or traversing your tank of 0.2 and a traverse of 0.12. So in these hidden numbers, of course there can only be one king, and it has of course to be the Soviet Object 703. But if we compare the Skoda T56 against the other tanks, then yes, it might seem like it's superior in comparison to some of its brothers. But in all honesty, the 3.5 seconds we have to fire the second round, it just doesn't feel enough, because I have to rely on putting both shells out. If I miss my very first shot, I will be left with the dilemma of should I initiate a complete reload or suddenly use it as a direct 1-for-1 shot. You will see the dilemma that sometimes I'm facing in the two battles I have for you guys today. And when we take a look at the gun depression, 8 degrees looks definitely good, but I must say that I do wish it had 10 degrees. 8 degrees is definitely good, but the reason for why I wish it had 10 degrees is simply because your 100mm hull armor is going to be challenging. The Bisonte C45 have similar issue regarding its hull armor, but the Bisonte has a 10 degrees of gun depression. The difference between having 8 or 10 degrees is quite significant. And for the next chapter we have the mobility. Forward speed 35, yes, this tank is sluggish going forward. But of course for me it's not really the most important thing regarding how fast it goes forwards, but it is how fast it ironically can go backwards. And here we have a reverse speed of 15, which is very much standard in this comparison. And naturally the next question becomes, what is the power to weight ratio? And here we have 13.54, which is definitely decent, alongside some proper terrain resistances that doesn't receive any major disadvantages besides for the soft terrain. And this is also where I feel that the turbocharger is going to be such significant for this particular tank, and is going to change the whole feel of the tank, because that 40 an hour forward speed together with that 18 kilometers reverse speed and that boost in power to weight ratio is really going to make your tank feel that much more nimble in comparison to the stock version. Because not only is it going to improve the vital reverse speed alongside that acceleration, but also the turbocharger is going to improve that tank traverse speed. And having the turbocharger alongside that rotation mechanism is, in my opinion, a must for this tank. And for the armor, we of course going to take a look at this in less than a minute, but in general you can directly see where the focus lies and where it definitely does, because 100mm frontal armor, no bueno. What we can mention is of course the HP pool of 1500, which is very average for a tier 8 heavy tank. And for the very last figures we have the camo values, which again are in the heavy tank category, both when moving and stationary. And to finish it up, the view range 370 base, which again is quite standard for a tank at this caliber, where only the Soviet heavies are still trying to find the enemy tanks. Okay guys, let's jump over to the armor profile. Okay guys, so here we have the armor profile of the Skoda T56, and for this analyze we're going to use its premium 248mm of standard EP shells. And let's take a look how it looks in the live view. There we go. I don't know what kind of mushroom the tank commander has taken, but nevertheless guys, let's take a look. So right off the bat, the hull armor is definitely nothing special. Around 190mm to around 170 is really no bueno. And at the very lower plate of 185, yeah, that looks severely bad. So for this analyze guys, because this is kind of spaced out everywhere from the different directions, we are going to take a look at the visual view instead and analyze it from here. Because the interesting part is of course that extra protection the turret has, which we can see here. And the gun metal on the very edges definitely looks very impressive, but there are places where it's slightly less, with approximately 260mm, and you can see similar values up here. So just to the left, but very close. And we are of course talking about a couple of millimeters difference. So the RNG definitely has to be with you. The similar situation here, where again you have values of around 260mm, but just moving a few millimeters to the right, you can see the values just jumps up. If you aim slightly to the left of the gun mantle, you will notice values of around 270mm, and here of course they will simply ricochet due to the angle of the turret. And it is a bit similar scenario on the right side. Again 270mm, the spot shooting slightly to the right of it of course will ricochet due to the extreme angle of around 70 degrees. But what is very noticeable is of course this particular viewport that only has an effective armor of 220mm and is really not angled. So if you're facing this particular tank and he's doing his very best to hide his cupola, then this is a very viable option. But of course if you are using this tank yourself, then it can be viable to keep your turret mobile. What will happen if you are engaging another similar tank that has 270mm? Well, let's try it out. There we go. And here we got the 270mm heat shields that Bisonte is featuring. And here the difference looks way better, because suddenly with the spaced armor is going to be your friend, as long as they're not shooting down on your whole armor, of course, right here. And if the Skoda T56 is facing the IS-3A's standard APCR rounds of 221mm, then as long as you're able to hide your whole armor, then definitely it seems to be able to do its job, besides of course this particular spot. But still here we have around 50% chance to just penetrate. And if you try to take this tank hull down, and let's take a look, let's try to give it some spacey colors, then you can directly see here the 8 degrees of gun depression is definitely going to make a big difference for 221mm rounds. The only real opening that you have against this particular tank is this spot, as the 270mm heat shells, yes, they are definitely better, but still are offering a success chance of only up to 40%, excluding the not protected spot. But what about if you try to side scrape? Well, let's take a look, because the interesting part is, can we utilize this whole armor at all? How extreme angle do we need to have? Well, check this guys. Yeah, this kind of seems extreme to angle your tank at this particular angle, but what quickly becomes interesting is the side profile. It seems to be very well angled and provides some amazing figures. So if you are able to side scrape with this particular tank and hide your frontal hull armor, then it definitely seems like a proper side scraping tank, as long as you don't overdo it. And when taking a look at its side armor, with still the heat shields loaded, then yeah, it will easily go through both in the turret and its hull armor. And last, when we take a look at the rear of the tank, 70 to 80mm both the turret, the hull, and 70mm in the very rear. Okay guys, let's continue by taking a look at two of course very recent battles I just had in the Skoda T56. Okay guys, so here we are on Ghost Town. I'm playing together with Cobalt Wolf, and of course I'm playing the Skoda T56. You can directly see the select configuration option, which is quite cool, and I like that. And you can see I'm going for the premium setup. Well, as premium as you get, because those premium AP rounds, yeah, I do seriously wish they were actually better. For this particular matchmaker, I can see there are definitely a lot of heavy tanks here. So our work is definitely got out for us. But yeah, regarding the penetration, 248, and now we're going to face tier 9 in the city. Yeah, it is definitely going to be challenging. Because for this tank to be truly magical, you have as often as possible to be able to trade those 2 shots against enemies 1. Of course the question becomes, how effectively can we do that with that 248 pen? Because here I would be seriously surprised. Okay, that was that was surprising. That's actually very well shot by the enemy tank there. That's very well. Nevertheless guys, we have an AA phase 1 right in front of us. I can see Cobalt is also pre-aiming. That was quite good. Put in a shot. Yeah, it's just trying it out here. So now I have one shell. Okay, this guy seems maybe to YOLO. Yeah, I'm going to save it. Maybe, maybe, maybe. Yeah. Good. Okay, 495 damage. Okay, it's getting a bit dangerous, especially I'm a bit worried about my rear. Then 1 of 3 maybe is looking towards us. Seriously, not a lot of space. Okay, my comrade here got taken out nearly instantly. Yeah, this could be a very, very quick game, guys. Let's see, what can we do? What can we do? Okay. Get our tracks back together here. Okay, the guy seems to move his turret up. Yeah. There you can see, guys, the 3.5 seconds, it was exactly not enough. Okay, now this get also a bit lucky with the defender. And it was, if we had a 2.5 seconds intro-clip reload speed, we would actually be able to place those 2 shots. Yeah, I don't really feel quite confident right now trading, so I'm going to reload my whole clip here and wait those 21.75 seconds. So yes, trading 460 alpha damage against the enemies. What is it? Hopefully less. Well, not in this particular scenario, because both the E75 and the other Skoda T56 both have superior. Not superior, but really good alpha damage. Especially E75. Okay, 1408 damage currently. Seriously, we're going to rush us. Luckily, we have the Bisonte and the IS-3 behind us. Let's see. Just waiting for them to slightly move the turrets away so we can take the chance. Can we? Wow. Oh, that was a bad shot. That was a really bad shot. I'm not worried about the rear. Yeah, my comrade who was behind us, he is also dead. I seriously feel stuck here. And the enemies are just piling up, more and more of them. There's 3 guys there. Let's go to T56. And again, we're forced to reload our whole magazine again. Let's go to T56. Yeah, I'm trying to track the shot here. Can we put in another one? Can we put another? Come on. Yeah. Okay. 2 and we are nearly dead. 338. So the 88, sorry. Damage left. Okay, maybe see the Emil is starting to move. If he looks away, we might be able to put space. Okay, his turret's definitely away. Come on. There we go. Nice. Still not looking? Oh, nice. Okay, that. It's kind of weird that one, but nevertheless, we are still alive. Well, for a few extra seconds right now, we are 4,700 HP behind. It's 3-5, doesn't look good. What's the Emil doing? He's still looking away. Okay. Hello. Was lucky, didn't give us damage. And we have 1 shell, and the skillful RT player managed to hit us. So we got 1 shell. What shall we do? Yeah. Unless I can put a directed shot, I have to reload, yeah. Okay. Ah. Thinking, no, I shouldn't have reloaded, Emil was just there. But then he died just as quickly as my thought. Came in. Okay, 3 seconds, come on. So yeah, this particular position provides us loads of dilemmas. And it's not always we can use this clip. But we can still see that we managed to deal an amazing 3,200 damage. Because one thing is that what this tank definitely can do, you can definitely find yourself doing way more damage than you usually would in other tanks, when the situation allows for it. So in that regard, if your main focus is just to deal damage, I think this tank definitely is one of the better. Regarding how often you hit, how often you penetrate, the consistency of your armor. That's a completely different question. Just hoping for I can see our friends are attacking. You know what? Okay. See everyone who pops in behind me, they are suffering the same fate. Okay. I definitely have to be calm. Go. Come on, come on, come on. Yeah. And we have one shield. Where's the... No targets, no targets. Yeah, and again I have to reload. So yes, this gun is definitely enjoyable, but I must say it's kind of double-edged sword because when it's enjoyable, it also seems to be kind of frustrating at times because again we fire a shell, and what I'm going to use for the other shell, and again I find myself having a reload of, well, slightly more now, of those 21.75 seconds. Okay, suddenly 9.8. Actually, I honestly thought we were going to completely lose it just a few seconds ago. No idea how I'm still alive, and we got 3,000, nearly 3,700 damage. Not bad at all, not bad at all. Sounds nice. Uh, 156 HP. Yeah, I don't really feel that super confident. The enemy definitely has a chance at decapping. We have to get the cap. Yeah, we can't even decap us once now. So maybe I can protect from this side. I expect the enemy team to have some tanks at this spot. One thing I definitely can't trust in this tank is this whole armor. It's really not existing. Maybe I should say it more. Every time I say this armor is bad, yeah, it's good. Famous last words. Is it? Is it? Is it? Are we really going to win this one? No? What? Oh my god. What was that? Did you guys see there was 0 second? No, we won actually. Okay guys, so here for the next game we are playing on Overlord map. I'm playing together with Destroyer and his list. And of course I'm playing the Skoda T56. Again on this one we are bottom tier. Just make the map a bit bigger. Yeah, what to do. 2 arties, 2 light tanks, 5 heavies. We have 8 degrees of gun depression. Okay, this is not good. There's no way. If I'm lucky I will bounce one of them. Yeah, there we go. What about the next one? Hopefully. Track absorb that one. Okay, we took one for the team. At least we can provide some far from this back. Do notice the reticle, guys. You know already I have like semi-decent crew on it, and I have some gear that is helping us out, but it's not really groundbreaking. That was a nice shot. 533. This feels good. Well, for one of us. But the snapshot capabilities of this particular tank, it really feels mediocre. Yeah. Okay, the last shot I have no idea how it went in, but yeah, I'm accepting it. Humble servant of the RNG. So game just started and we have 1,403 damage, not bad. Let's see if the... oh, he's still there. There we go. Is he willing still to stay there? Yeah. Fantastic showcase of how devastating this gun actually is. But do keep in mind that we caught him quite far out. He needed around those 4 seconds to get away, so we were lucky. But if he was slightly better positioned, there would no way we fire both our shells. It was a similar scenario as we saw in the just previous battle. Because I just had to again make a full reload. 21.75 seconds might not seem a lot, which definitely it is not, but yeah, in very heated moments it can feel like an eternity. I definitely have to get away from here because you can see we already lost the whole right flank. I just ended up getting some beating myself, so we don't have anything to spot. So let's see if we can shoot down at these guys here. Probably not. So yeah. Looks like they're going to be stuck there for some time. Still looks like we have the T44 maybe. Ah. He needs to poke a bit more. Maybe the light tank. Oh, nice. 501 damage. Is he going to peek out again? Okay. Yeah, and the super skillful artsy of course got us slightly. We have what, 184 health left. Reloading. Just checking my armor here. I get slightly gold, hold on. See also enemy tanks just below us. Can I actually put a shell on this? Can we? Yeah. How much health did he have? Wow. Okay, this is getting tight. Okay, you have 12 health left. T44. This looks. Yeah. What to do? So, the Skoda T56. What do I think of it, and most importantly, is it worth picking up from the premium shop? The Skoda T56 definitely offers something unique by featuring some of the highest alpha damage on a tier 6 heavy tank alongside combining it in a 2-shot auto-loader system. My very first impression was directly wow, but the thing is that in my opinion, and despite its insane alpha damage burst potential, then Wargaming actually managed to balance it quite decent, because the burst damage potential definitely feels overpowered when it works, and so does your turret armor. But the thing is that most tanks in the game can be extremely good in the right environment, and in my opinion what truly makes the difference between being a good tank or the very best is how flexible a tank is when facing various tricky and challenging situations on the battlefield, where one of them is not surprisingly a bad matchmaker. The other thing is that your first 5 solo battles are near to certain going to place you as a top tier, and in this particular environment this tank, when facing less armored opponents, is extremely strong, and your devastating firepower of delivering those 920 alpha damage in 3.5 seconds will very quickly earn you the respect on the battlefield. But when you start to encounter tougher tier opponents, which often consist of very heavily armored heavy tanks, then you might get a recurring thought, what am I supposed to do? As you see your shells bounce off the enemy armor one after another, and suddenly the lack of proper shell penetration will seriously start to give you a hard time. The other thing that I want to mention is that I recently reviewed the Soviet IS-3A, which I rated as a 4 out of 5, but with a rating 5 out of 5 for the more competitive skirmish battles. So naturally I have to compare the brand new Skoda T56 against it and ask myself whether I would prefer the Skoda T56 instead of the IS-3A. And this question of course led me to also try out the Skoda T56 in the more competitive arena, and I do see it as a viable option, but to be honest, barely, because at least for me both the Object 703 and the IS-3A just feel so much stronger. So how many facepalms would I give the Czech Tier 8 Skoda T56 Premium Heavy Tank? Well, it receives 3 facepalms. The Skoda T56 is definitely not a weak tank, and I'm certainly rating it above the average with 3 slaps out of 5. But in my eyes, this tank's performance level comes down to its reliability to perform, and here it is on a similar level as the Italian Bisonte. Both are fantastic in a certain situation, but often you will find yourself in tricky situations which will not allow you to make the best use of the tank. What ironically surprised me about the Skoda T56 is that I have much more enjoyable gameplay experiences in the Italian Bisonte, and here I do not mean better battle performance, but simply less frustrating and more pleasant gameplay experience, as overall the Bisonte gives me more options against heavily armored opponents. The Skoda T56, when facing a good matchmaker and the right map, can super easily feel overpowered, but in the end, why it does not receive my rating of 4 facepalms or more, then it really comes down to being that surprisingly situational for the following main reasons. The first is that your hull armor is not existing, and you have to heavily rely on either side scraping or finding a place to hide your lower plate. The second is that for this tank to be utilized the very best, you need to have 2 shots loaded, because trading your 2 shots for one of your opponents is very often a quite good trade. But what often do happen is that if you miss your very first shell, or it simply misses, then you can very often find yourself forced to reload the entire clip, and when this happens several times in a row, then it can make me at times question my choice of tank. The third reason is that the premium AP penetration of 248mm is seriously bad. 248 penetrations against a higher tier hull down heavy tank just feels no bueno. And the fourth main reason really touches on what the general speciality and uniqueness of the Czech tanks are, and it is of course the super low intra-clip speed, which you quickly notice on the tanks at tier 8 and above, both the heavy and the medium line. And this is here where the 3.5 seconds can really feel sluggish more often than not, because those 3.5 seconds are very often the exact amount of time to hide the tank after they shot at you from around the corner. In my opinion, the tank's intra-clip reload speed should have been around 2.5 seconds, together with proper premium rounds, because then I would gladly have traded the alpha damage per shell to, let's say, 390 per shot for this trade, because this would personally have given me a much more pleasant tank experience and less of those moments where I start to doubt my choice of tank. The Skoda T56 is definitely a strong tank, and one that I personally see myself take out onto the battlefield from time to time, but in my personal opinion, the lack of reliability gives this tank no chance of becoming the new #1 meta tank for either random or competitive battles. The Skoda T56 is good, but I am still left with a strange feeling wishing it was better. Okay guys, let's finish up. I hope that this tank review was helpful towards your decision on whether you should pick up the Skoda T56 premium tank next time you have the chance. And thanks a lot for watching guys, this was my tank review number 42. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think of the Skoda T56 heavy tank in the comments below. Did you pick one up, and what is your opinion of this tank? And as always, if you like to see more crazy content from my side, feel free to leave a like or even subscribe. It's a big thumbs up for me and I appreciate it a lot. Cheers guys, take care and see you next time.